Oh hey, it's Olivia. Let's do a workshop.
Show me how you care.
Before we get to design, we'll need to prep our vase. For this, you'll need a knife. This container takes 1 1/4 brick of Oasis foam, so you'll need to do some cutting. I recommend cutting while the foam is dry. That way, you can save your leftover dry foam for a later project. Next, we'll need to soak our foam. For this, you'll need a bucket or a large bowl filled with water. Allow your foam to absorb completely without pushing it under the water. This may take a few minutes. Now we'll need to add our foam to our vase by firmly pushing the blocks all the way down without squeezing. Finally, I'll trim the corners of my foam. This is mostly a personal preference and not at all required.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us for our Easter Centerpiece workshop, and a happy Easter season to you all who celebrate. So tonight we have a different kind of shape arrangement. We're working with this, what we call a long and low rectangular vase. So we're going to follow that kind of long and low shape with our flowers, creating an oval or an oblong arrangement to go down your dining table. Everyone should have their bucket of balloons. I went ahead and separated a couple of my more delicate pieces just to protect them from things being tangled in the buckets. So you should have your vase all prepped here, ready to go, pre-foamed. If it is your preference, you can cut this foam down to be flush with the rim of the vase. I personally like to leave it with this little bit of height. It allows me to kind of get a fluffier, fuller look. When we make our cut on our stem, we want to aim for at least 2 inches of insertion into your foam. That way it is further enough in that it is nice and secure, but it allows for more stems to go into your foam without compromising the integrity of the whole arrangement. So I'm going to grab my mini green hydrangea from my bucket first and prepare my stems. I like to go ahead and prepare all of my stems at once so I can just boop them in. If there's any low-lying leaves that you might want to remove, any damaged leaves, anything that you feel is just overpowering, you go ahead and pare that down. With my mini greens, my goal is to put 1 in each corner of my rectangle, so I'm kind of following the shape that my vase is already providing, and then I'll make sure to put 1 on either side here, staying true to the Helen Olivia style of using these mini greens as the base around the rim of our arrangements. So I'm going to make my first cut. I want to make sure that at least 2 inches go into my foam, but I also want the head of my hydrangea to still stick out fairly nicely. So again, you can always cut more, you can always cut again, but you can't get any length back after you've cut. So always cut longer first, and then you can trim if you need to. I'm going to make that first insertion. I'm confident about where I am putting this, and I'm going in as far as I want to go, and then that's it. I'm not going to move it or mess with it anymore to allow it to stay snug in that foam. I'm going to repeat that for all 4 corners of my arrangement. And now with my last 2, I'm going to go for each side wall of the rectangle. Next, we're going to move on to our greenery. We're going to green up the base of our arrangement to provide a nice fluffy base for all of our beautiful blooms. We've got multiple types of greenery in this arrangement for a just fresh, gardeny spring look. Base greenery is going to be this
Little leaf pittosporum.
and bay laurel. This guy has a strong scent. You'll smell it as you cut the stems. The third greenery is going to be our umbrella fern. First, we start by breaking up our stems.
Little leaf.
You can break them or you can use your clippers, but we want to pare down the stems to give ourselves easy to use and work with pieces in our arrangement. Now, to do so, I'm going to cut down the stem right above where it has these laterals coming out. I'm going to give it a snip there, and that's going to give me multiple pieces that I can use. And remember, we can use a shorter stem length when you're using foam because it only has to go in about 2 inches. So you can use smaller pieces to fill your arrangement. Again, I like to go ahead and prep all of my usable pieces at once so then I can just pop them in. With these first pieces, I want to make sure to continue this line on either end to follow this oblong, wide shape. So I'm going to make sure to put some longer pieces in between my mini greens there. And then I'm going to go ahead and just follow around the rim of my vase and in between my mini greens to blur the foam and cover up the foam as much as I can. Next, we're going to use our bay laurel. I went ahead and prepped a couple of short usable stems here from one of my larger branches. So I'm going to go ahead and start with half of this. So I went ahead and followed my bay around the rim of my arrangement. I have a couple more pieces left. I'm not going to use all of it. I do want to save a little bit until the end in case there's any details that I missed. I'm going to use a couple of these right now just to give me some fluff in the center. Still an important part of foam arrangements, even more so I would say than water-based arrangements, to clean your stems and not have any leaves being shoved into the foam. Again, the more you shove into the foam, the more damage to the structural integrity and it falls apart. So for our last greenery is our umbrella fern. You should have a single piece of this in your bucket, but what's great about umbrella fern is just this surface area that it gives, the coverage of surface area that it gives us with these nice pretty fronds that spread out. I like to manipulate mine together because I'm going to go right in the middle, so I'm going to elongate my fern so that these fronds follow this elongated shape that I am trying to create. So again, we don't need a lot of stem length. I'm going to push in, and you just might have to do a little weaving. I'm just kind of tucking this underneath of some of my other greenery to hold it down. And as we put more flowers into the arrangement, they will also help to hold the ferns down. Next, we're going to move on to our first flower of the evening. I'm going to start with one of my roses, specifically this gorgeous peach shimmer rose. Now, roses have a two-step process for cleaning the stem before it can be used in an arrangement. Of course, removing all of those leaves, we don't need them. Be careful, roses have thorns. Not always. This variety tends to be better about not having so many, but just be careful and be cautious and use your clippers to clip any off if you come across them. Remove all of those leaves, and then we need to move up to our flower head here, and we've got a bunch of wrinkled and broken petals. We want to remove those to give ourselves a clean face to work with. So kind of see the difference between this one is a cleaned up rose, and then this one needs to be cleaned up. I'm going to go ahead and quickly prep all of my roses to use. So to start with my shimmers, I want to essentially place one in between each of my mini greens, kind of lower down to get that lower face of my arrangement covered. Again, making sure that that rim is completely covered. I'm going to start on my ends and use a little bit of a longer stem so that, again, I can elongate my flowers in my arrangement. And whatever I do on this side, I'm going to repeat on this side. So again, with a bit of a longer stem, you can kind of see sticking out from the mini greens. And then with some shorter pieces, I'm going to go along the sides. When I'm inserting into the foam, I'm keeping in mind that I really don't have much room for error. So when I am inserting, I am making sure that my angle is correct. And rather than going downwards like you would in a flower arrangement, we really want to make sure that we're kind of going more across through the foam. With my last two roses, I'm going to go somewhere in the middle just to have that color kind of evenly dispersed. When I'm putting flowers in the middle of this shape arrangement, we still don't want things to be too high to block our view, but we want it to be in scale with the long shape. So I kind of like to hit somewhere around here, get a nice mound, or you can go lower in the center and higher on the ends, depending on your preference. The next rose that I am going to pull from my bucket is our second of the evening. This is a creme de la creme rose. It's a beautiful butter yellow. And you should have 5 of these stems to use. So we'll go ahead and prep those. Again, being cautious of any thorns on our stems, removing all of the leaves and cleaning up the guard petals. Creme de la cremes are a little bit of a tighter rose. They're more of a pointed petal pattern, but they do open beautifully. You can give them a slight little blow in the center to get some air in between the petals. Now, since I am using 5 of these, I don't necessarily want to exactly follow what I did with my shimmers. It's an odd number, so I think I actually want to kind of do a little bit of a grouping action with these guys. So I'll probably do a couple together on one side of my arrangement and then a couple on the opposite side to make sure both faces of my arrangement, both ends of my arrangement are covered. When I pair 2 of the same flower together, I like to be intentional with my positioning and angling in a way that gives it dimension. So rather than having the same flower right next to each other at the same level, I like to very lightly, very slightly, like I'm talking a couple centimeters, do a difference in height on my roses. So my one that's up here is just a couple centimeters further up than this guy is. This guy's tucked down a little bit closer to my greenery. So that just gives it just a little bit of dimension with the same flower next to each other. With my last rose, I'm going to go completely opposite of where I did my other groupings. This guy's the biggest head, so I'm going to put him by himself. He's just going to go over there. So now we'll move on to our spray roses. We also have two varieties of spray roses. You have 3 stems of each color, 3 stems of this gorgeous peach spray rose. These are called baby Roosevelts. And then we've got 3 stems of this gorgeous pale yellow rose. This variety specifically is called a Giocondo rose. Spray roses don't typically have large thorns, but they will have a couple small ones, so be careful. But the same thing we want to do is to pare our stems down, remove all of these leaves, and then with spray roses, if you do have any super low-lying blooms down your stem, they'll prevent you from getting into the foam and getting the stem where you want it to. So you want to go ahead and pop those off so you have a nice cluster at the top and nothing down here that will prevent you from entering the foam. So I'm going to go ahead and prep all of my spray roses. We're going to do a little bit of playing with colors and blending these 2 different colors together by using the 2 different colored spray roses. I want to evenly disperse this buttery color throughout my arrangement. So I'm kind of looking at where maybe that needs to be continued or spread out. And first thing I see is I definitely want to give this single butter rose a friend. So I'm going to pair him up with one of my spray roses. And then since I did something on that side, I want to go to the exact opposite side of my arrangement and do something similar to keep some symmetry going on. And then for my final stem of spray rose, I just kind of want to see if there is any other space. I'm going to put my peach ones in first and then see where else I might want this color. I'm going to do the same thing with my peach roses and see if there's any space that specifically needs this color. And I've got a blank space here and a lot of yellow, so I think this is where we'll start. So I've got 2 stems left, 1 yellow, 1 peach. So I'm just going to go ahead and fill in where I need some more blending. I want to make sure that these colors are evenly dispersed in my arrangement and I don't have all of the yellow flowers next to each other and all of the peach flowers next to each other. The next flower we're going to pull from our bucket is going to be our green hellebores. Should have about 3 stems, 2 or 3 stems of these babies, and these guys have a lot of arms and legs. So we've got to do a lot of paring down to get some usable pieces out of these. Now, if you have a stem like this that has very long arms and legs lower down, you can just pop those off real easily, and then these pieces can be used by themselves. Up here, you might have to do a little bit of cutting, a little flower stem surgery. So I'm going to cut some of these arms off, and then I've got 2 pieces out of that stem. Same thing, I don't have many leaves, but if anything is lower lying, I'm going to remove those. I'm going to separate these into small usable stems. I want to place my hellebore utilizing the natural shape, curve, and bounce of these flowers. They're really a special flower for spring, super in seasonal right now, and just everything that you put them in just is happy. So I'm kind of going to follow around, just evenly dispersing these, trying to get a nice bounce and shape to my arrangement. I definitely want to make sure that I am continuing the line on either end to elongate my flowers. But as I insert, I am positioning my stem in a way that follows the natural curve of the flower and uses that to our benefit. I want to make sure that I get some bouncy floating pieces up in the center so that our arrangement doesn't end up being too compact. Some people will consider hellebore we source our hellebores from Holland in the EU. They are. So I just have that nice bright green, evenly dispersed in my arrangement, little happy guys sticking out everywhere to catch your eye. The next flower that we are going to pull is, we're moving on to our delicate stems. The first will be our Lisianthus. We have this gorgeous cream Lisianthus that just works as a really nice blender between these bright greens and this butter yellow. You should have about 2 to 3 stems of your Lisianthus. Some of your stems might be like this, and you just get a nice big bloom, and you can separate any of these laterals that are low enough and have a long enough stem on them. If you have multiple blooms like this, you can break these up into multiple pieces. And I personally really enjoy saving these tendrils, these little bud pieces, and including them. It can also just really enhance the happy of your arrangement. So first I want to use some of these solid, larger, open blooms of my Lisianthus, and I want to use them to fill holes. So anywhere where I see that I still have pretty big green openings, I can see my foam, or there's only greenery, I want to put that in there. Cover that all up. Want to make sure to always hide all of our mechanics. Then I'm going to add in these floaty buds just to help with my shape and my dimension of my arrangement. The next stem we want to pull from our vase or bucket is going to be these gorgeous, peachy, coral butterfly ranunculus. You should have about 2 or 3 stems of these guys. What's really cool about butterfly ranunculus, they are fairly long lasting for being such a delicate flower, but they'll open up big like this, but even their little tiny buds will continue to open even after the large bloom goes away. So I think that they can really be fun in an arrangement, especially one that if you're watching over the couple days, it loses its petals and then more continue to bloom. So I'm going to use these bigger pieces. They just need a little bit more support, so I want to keep them fairly low, kind of following just the natural gravity of this head. So I'm looking for anywhere where I have a large enough spot that can support this head. You may have to be slightly more careful with your butterfly ranunculus when inserting. They might need a little bit more guidance into the foam. Sometimes these soft stems like this will really resist and then can end up breaking as you're trying to push. The important part is finding a spot in your foam that does not have a stem in the way. So next I'm gonna, just like I did with my Lisianthus, I'm gonna just pop in these buds and these floaty pieces all around to fill out and add more happy. I'm going to move on to the rest of my delicate stems here. At this point, most all of your foam, your mechanics should be covered. We should still have a little bit of breathing room amongst our flowers, but we don't want things to be too compact. We want to allow our flowers to breathe and open. So I personally like the space in between my blooms. So now I'm really just going to focus on adding the rest of these delicate stems that I have to enhance my shape, give it a little asymmetry, give it some more fun pieces. What I'm going to move on to is our ranunculus. We should have 3 stems of ranunculus. They are gorgeous, butter yellow ranunculus. We got these. These are one of the first local flowers of the season that we received from our grower, so we're very excited about that. You don't have to do too much prep to your ranunculus stem. If it has any wonky petals, you can pluck those off and clean it up. But you don't want to pull off too many, or else you're left with not much of a flower. Ranunculus are a very delicate stem to work with. They will break very easily, so just be very cautious and gentle as you're inserting into your arrangement. Now with these guys, I really just want to kind of evenly disperse them throughout my arrangement and get a nice flow going. And for my final flower of the evening, I'm going to pull out my white scabiosa. And this variety is called, I believe, a scoop scabiosa. You may have received a different variety that's maybe a little more fluffy, but these are what I am working with today. They have, again, just a natural bounce to them that I really want to utilize, so I'm not going to tuck them in too close. I'm going to let them breathe and stick out a little bit in my arrangement to say hello. I'm even going to use some of these small little buds my stems happen to have. There you have it. Here is our spring Easter long and low centerpiece, ready to go for your next hosting event. Congratulations, designers, you've made an arrangement.